Welcome to a webinar we're putting on today, The Legends at Feet and the Legends of Green Music Australia, coming together, joining forces to talk to you a little bit about the solar slice, which is just one of many, many ways that artists and their teams can contribute to positive climate outcomes. Oh, there was a nice pop sound. I want to start by acknowledging the land that I'm on. I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. That's where I was born. That's where I still live. It's where I work and I make music and I do gigs and I work with Green Music Australia. It is all on unceded sovereign land, and I want to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners who have historically and continue to be the custodians of these natural ecosystems, which are continually threatened by modern behaviours, the way we live. And I want to say a special thank you and welcome to any First Nations people who might be joining us today or who might be watching this back later on demand. And always good before we get into a conversation about both culture and climate to just pause and reflect on the tens of thousands of years, the many, many generations of people in this continent that have been telling stories, maintaining natural systems, connecting with each other to problem solve, which is what we're continuing to do today. A few more people coming through. It's nice to see you. You haven't missed too much. So you're going to hear from four of us today, and hopefully also we'll hear from you. I really want to make sure that as we get cracking into this, if there's any questions, big or small, that come up for you, or even just something like you can add, you feel like you might be able to add to the conversation, you can chuck that in the chat, or we'll have a couple of points throughout today's session where you can chuck your mic on and talk to us. But to introduce the four of us, you're going to hear from me to begin with. I'm Tim Shiel. I work at Green Music Australia. I've been with Green Music Australia for about almost 18 months, and I'm the community organiser and campaigner at Green Music Australia. I work on things like the No Music on a Dead Planet campaign, or at least Australia's contribution to that. And I also work on things like the gas export tax campaign, which you might have seen in the headlines the last couple of weeks. I'm also a musician and a former Triple J and Double J broadcaster. Soon you'll be hearing from Feet, Heidi and Bea, the two absolute forces of nature who run Feet, and they'll tell you more about exactly Feet's focus, combining music and climate action. Heidi is the founder of Feet, but you might also know her as a member of Cloud Control. And Bea is a long-term environmentalist who has worked in sustainability and impact in lots of different ways. And then this other guy, I have no idea. Never seen him before. I've just vaguely recognised the face. Oli, do you like I've kind of cropped Louis out of the photo? Like I didn't entirely crop him out. I just wanted to make sure he was
standing right here as well.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah, great.
There you are. Yeah,
in the
just
background. Nice.
the back.
Oh, very good. I love it. You are going to hear a lot from Feet today. They're going to tell you about what the solar slice is, because we really want more artists and more festivals and venues to be thinking about incorporating the solar slice as just one tool in the very large toolbox of climate action. But before I hand over to Feet, I will just tell you, in case you're watching this later and you don't know who we are, Green Music Australia, I'll give you a bit of context for that. So Green Music Australia is a non-profit charity that has been running since 2013. We're a very small team, and we are essentially trying to create better climate outcomes, positive climate action, through music. So we have a lot in common with Feet, and we both have lots of different programs and projects and resources that we offer the Australian music sector, and also artists and community as well. At Green Music, we kind of think of our project as having these two separate lanes, I guess, although there's a fair bit of overlap. One is greening the music sector, which is working with venues, festivals, record labels, vinyl manufacturing plants, anybody who considers themselves, I guess, part of the music industry. We will work with them when they allow us to work with them to help nudge them towards greener, better behaviours. So broadly speaking, sustainability. The other half of what we do is we think about how you can actually use music's unique power to drive change. So empowering artists, training them up, helping artists become leaders and advocates, finding campaigns and vehicles through which music fans themselves can get a little bit more involved in climate action, and just broadly trying to use music for social change, which is something that musicians have been doing not just for the last 100 years, but for thousands of years. Music is a really special, unique, forceful way of creating positive change in the world. So those two things, there's a whole bunch of different ways in which we try and do these two things. And like I said, there's often a fair bit of overlap, but it's from the science-driven carbon and waste reduction through to the more feelsy, speaking up, using your voice, and allying with very aligned campaigns on other kinds of justice, like Indigenous justice, gender justice, and more. So a few real basic facts in for climate in 2026. It feels like 20 years ago, this could have been the whole presentation, but we don't need to do this anymore because everybody kind of knows this stuff. We don't all necessarily feel like experts in climate science, but there is just an agreed set of realities. The planet is in danger. There's some good news stories, but we're still not moving fast enough. As a globe, as a country, we need to do more. People want change. People are now educated on climate science to the point where the majority of people want governments to be doing more, corporations to do more, and they themselves want to keep figuring out how to do more. But a fact that's relevant to this conversation and to music is that music can drive change. We've seen that through all kinds of human rights and other social issues over the years. And it's true in climate. And I love this quote from Billie Eilish that the music industry has started to become more eco-friendly because Billie Eilish and her mum have been yelling at them. They've actually had a lot of impact simply by forcing people to do stuff because she's Billie Eilish. We love Billie. We're not all Billie Eilish. Many of us, in fact, aren't. But we can all do a lot as artists to do our bit. This is the part where I tell you about this guide we have for Green Music Australia. If you're an artist and you've joined this call and you've never seen this, go check it out after our call, because there's lots of amazing tips and resources and ideas in here for how to be a green artist, from touring, merchandise, how you choose to use your voice, authentically engaging with First Nations ideas and collaborators and creators. Lots of great ideas in this book, but to bring it back to what artists can do, we're going to talk about a very specific thing artists can do today, and that's the solar slice, which is the main focus of Feet in 2026. So I'm going to hand over now to Heidi and Bea from Feet, who are going to give us a bit of a breakdown of what the solar slice is, give us a bunch of examples of how it's been used by artists and festivals, and we also will hear from Oli from Cordiale about how they've been using the solar slice to do some amazing good in the world. So over to you, Feet.
Thanks so much, Tim. So wonderful to be here today. Okay, so I thought we'd kick off with just a bit of an origin story to give you a snapshot of who we are, where we came from, and why we do what we do. So as Tim mentioned, I am in the band called Cloud Control. I spent most of my 20s touring the world, writing music, releasing songs. I've just loved every minute of it. And one of the things that stuck with me before I started Feet was just this unresolved tension where every time I would meet a new community that loved my music in the far-flung corners of the universe, I would think this is the best job ever. But then I'd get on another long-haul flight to go back to Australia, see my family, go back to my home, which was now in London, where we relocated as a band. And it was just a lot. It was a lot. And there was a cognitive dissonance at play where I just kept telling myself I was doing the right thing by making art, sharing it with people who could identify their lives in that art. And I believe that to this day, that music is the thing that needs to be kept afloat in this whole conversation. What needs to change is the foundations that underpin that music, and that's how we deliver it around the world. And there are so many solutions that can be rolled out. So I'll take you back to 2013 on the next slide, Tim. We just released the Dream Cave record. We debuted it at the Sydney Opera House, and at this stage, this was like the height of my high emissions lifestyle, if you want to call it that. I was located, we were traversing a global album cycle. And I thought, look, if I'm going to do something to look the problem in the face, I'm going to understand what the impact of this specific tour is going to leave on the planet. So I worked with some carbon scientists and crunched the numbers so that you guys don't have to. So we looked at a national album tour of Australia, That's hitting the 5 main capital cities, playing a bunch of regionals, a total of 15 shows over the course of 5 weekends. So it's a pretty exemplary sort of album tour for a lot of bands. So I thought it was a useful one to get a snapshot of. So what that equated was 28 tons of carbon emissions, capturing 44 flights for all the crew and artists, 16,000 air miles and 1,800 road kilometres as well. And what that equates to is the annual emissions of an entire 5-person household. So why I think it's important to put that into those terms of equivalency is that, this was something I was actively choosing to do, to peddle this music to the world, to go on tour. But I was keen to understand that how that placed me then was putting me into a category of a very high emissions job, and that demanded a response. For anyone who's taking responsibility for their actions in the world, and artists beyond most professions are very good at doing that, looking problems in the face, reflecting the world back to their audiences, and really interrogating and wrestling with the hard stuff. So this is what I was trying to do by understanding this footprint and then coming up with a solution, which was creating FEET. So this is the Climate Impact Agency for the live entertainment industry. I recognize that so many of my friends in bands were feeling the same way. So back in 2019, we decided, well, let's get together, let's put a whole bunch of money from our touring, as well as backed by philanthropy and some other institutional investment. Let's see what we can do if we pool our money and try and move the needle on something important for Australia. So back in 2019, the clean energy revolution in Australia was not as underway as it should have been. There were huge tracts of land which could be repurposed for solar farms to really get our grid into the picture and online as a significant clean energy player. And so we worked to identify some land, build a solar farm, and get investment from 200 plus touring artists, as well as some philanthropic money. And in the end, we were able to fund Brigalow Solar Farm on the next slide, which you can see, this is the same piece of land. And there I am in the middle right there, tiny me, standing in this field, which was transformed in a matter of 9 months. And it was such a strong demonstration to me of what collective action can achieve if it's funneled very specifically into boots on the ground action. So that's created a legacy for us, which we then rolled into this next initiative, which is the Solar Slice. And the point here was to see if we could work with events, festivals, promoters, the broader touring ecosystem to see what we could do to get that same change momentum into the broader ecosystem that artists inhabit. So the Solar Slice is a $1 surcharge that sits in the booking fee for any ticketed event, and it funds climate and nature. And we'll go into this in more detail soon, but I just wanted to share that, we partnered with a range of your favorite festivals, and we launched back in 2022 with Oli and Louis from Cordiale, who can share what that Solar Slice has been put to fund for the last 4 years. And now I'm going to hand over to Bea to bring her into the mix, because Bea's my delightful co-founder and dear friend, and she brings a whole range of different experience and wealth of knowledge. Bea, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Heidi. My name's Bea and I'm the impact manager at FEET. So I head up all of our Solar Slice programs with our artist and festival partners. And my background is mainly working with touring musicians and big festivals to focus on the kind of nature conservation space. So really looking at how we can not only really reduce the negative impacts of an event or tour, but how we can leave a really positive environmental legacy where we tour and host large events. I think similar to Heidi, sorry if you go back one, Tim. Similar to Heidi, working in the industry that I loved primarily in big kind of arts and cultural festivals and with artists. I loved the creative side of the industry. I loved bringing art to people and working very deeply in that industry, but was very aware of the negative impacts that hosting bigger events had on our environment. So I was also quite aware that we could do things very differently for better. So I was very lucky to tour with a bunch of artists, one of them being Tim Minchin back in 2021. And that's when I was lucky enough to meet Heidi and join the Feet team. And yeah, we've been working together ever since, and we will dive into kind of the core impact areas that we fund in a bit more detail. But I'll pass back to Heidi to run through a bit more on the solar slice.
Awesome. Thanks, B. So what is the solar slice? So $1, it sits in the booking fee. Now, the key point to make here, it's not a customer add-on. So it's not a carbon offsetting situation where you get to the end of the purchase and you get asked to tick a box. It's not that. It's actually built into the price. So when you go to buy an event, like it's actually been built in by the artist or the promoter as a demonstration of climate leadership, that they go, okay, we're putting on a tour, it comes at a cost. Let's build a mechanism to address that cost. So it builds a sustainability budget into the DNA of the tour, rather than it being an afterthought at the end where you can't really move the dial once the horse has bolted. When the tour's on, that's too late. You can't think about what to do then. And what does it fund? 3 core streams of impact. So we focus on reducing the emissions, regenerating nature, and then supporting cultural leadership. So how this looks in the financial breakdown, if you like numbers like me, for a $99 ticket. So I understand that lots of people on this call will not be at this price point, but some of us will be, you know, way beyond that price point. This is sort of an average ticket example. So you can see the breakdown of where the solar slice sits. In the booking fee there, next to the ticketing fee, you can see that the total to the customer is still $99. And that's because the artist is really deciding at the outset to put an extra dollar into the mix and then keep the same price point. So if you look at what that looks like for the financials, just say you've sold 30,000 tickets for a national tour across Australia. Feet takes a project and administration fee of 20% to design and deliver the entire program. And then that brings us to $24,000 of solar slice. That is your budget to use across the tour. And so what that can fund in the third column, Tim, is a range of different things. It's going to look bespoke to each different tour, because we try to take the priorities of the artist into consideration, the best science-backed initiatives for that particular tour. If it's a regional one versus an urban cities-based one, it's going to look different. And then what kind of projects are going to give you the biggest bang for buck in terms of impact. So we'll go into lots of examples in a minute about how Lime have used theirs. So next slide, Tim. I'll hand back to B to chat through those core impact streams.
Thanks, Heidi. Yeah, so across all of our programs, and this really depends on the size of the solar slice. If it's a smaller budget, we generally kind of focus on one core project. But we, across bigger projects, we like to have an impact on these 3 core streams, which are, first and foremost, we look to reduce the impact of the tour as much as possible. We then look to regenerate, so looking again at that positive environmental legacy we can have. And then leaning into the kind of superpower of the arts and music, really, which is the storytelling capacity and leadership position that we can have as artists. So we work quite closely with our artists to share the solutions that they're funding across social media or with their audiences during the ticket buying process. And we also, across all of our programs, prioritise working with and supporting First Nations-led and owned organisations. So to give you a quick snapshot of what some of these look like in practice, reducing the tour's footprint, we're looking at things like transport and flights, venue energy, and transitioning all of these areas wherever we can to bring that core footprint down and phase out of fossil fuels wherever possible. So a few examples there. A lot of the great work Oli and Louis have been leading with electric transport, as well as Jack River. And the second impact stream of regenerate, this is one of my favorites, and this is really about wherever possible, and also focusing on local projects. So we work quite closely with our artists, depending on where they're based and what they're passionate about. But with the regenerate impact area, we'll look to support, tree plantings, reforestation projects, conservation initiatives, koala habitat. There's a broad range of different things we can focus on. And wherever possible, we always try and have an opportunity for artists to visit the projects they're funding as well. So maybe they're meeting some of the animal habitat that they're protecting, getting their hands dirty and visiting a tree planting on tour or doing a beach cleanup. But that's always a really, really nice way of actively kind of engaging and seeing the work that's being funded. And then again, sharing those stories and solutions with audience members. And then the third before we move on, we just want to really quickly mention one of the hero projects that we're leading at the moment in the nature conservation space, because this particular project, Oli and Louis have funded. So we thought we'd just mention it as a current opportunity if any artists on this call are keen to find out more or support. Basically, we are leading a collective of artists and festivals around Australia to fund a nature restoration project in Tasmania called Lungtalanada. And it's a tiny island off the coast of Tasmania that is owned and operated by the Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre. And FEET is teaming up with them to help bring some funding to a really important restoration project. They're looking to reintroduce a very cute fluffy wombat that you can see in the picture there called the Bass Strait wombat that is locally extinct. And there's a bunch of other really awesome restoration goals that project has. And we're currently still building an artist collective around that. So if anyone wants to learn more, there'll be an opportunity to find out some more details at the end, but worth quickly mentioning now. And the third impact area of cultural leadership is, like I mentioned, wherever possible, we work with First Nations-led organisations, and that's anything from funding First Nations mentees across festival operations with an organisation called Balya Production. We also work with First Nations Future or installing solar in remote Indigenous communities. It's really about kind of that holistic and broader impact that tour funding can have. And then we also, next slide please, Tim. The really important piece of the puzzle that we're obviously quite excited about working on and helping to share and shape those stories of impact and change with our artists. So if artists want to kind of speak up externally about this, and it's not always an option that everybody wants to do yet in their career, but lots of artists kind of really want to share the stories and solutions they're funding. So we work quite closely with them to roll out stories across social media as well as broader campaigns around just building that awareness and helping to shift and shape the culture around environmental protection in Australia and overseas.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Bea. That's such a great snapshot of our three impact areas. And so as you can see, there's a huge menu of options that you could fund with your solar slice across your tour. You could go super granular, really transforming the nuts and bolts of the vehicles you travel in, the way your shows are powered, and you can go macro as well and fund entire island restoration projects as well, or help transition remote communities to solar energy. You can fund your own participation in artist leadership retreat. There's so many ways you can activate your audience as well and getting them really involved to influence the behavior of your audiences is kind of one of the most impactful ways you could actually direct your energies, because one show can result in 100 people taking an action or pressuring their local politician to get into gear. So lots of things we can do. And next slide, Tim. Yeah, you'll see that we've rolled it out across 1.5 million tickets to date, which is such an exciting big figure. That represents $1.5 million that Australian artists have raised collectively to directly deploy into grassroots community-led projects, combating climate and restoring nature. So could your tour be next? It's something we're keen to discuss and would love to get your questions.
So good, Heidi. Yeah, it's $1.5 million. And it's also like, a lot of artists are doing it tough, like artists have been struggling financially historically for a long time, but it's particularly precarious at the moment. So without wanting to say like, oh, we're trying to shift all of that responsibility back onto our fans, like it's important to note this is a lot of money that's been raised at, not really any cost to an artist. It's just a choice that's been made at some point, which, I love. So as Heidi said, like if anyone's got questions, please do come off mute now. Like, we're going to talk more. We're going to bring Oli into this chat and keep going. But I just thought it might be good to just pause and make sure we've sort of got our heads around the solar slice. I mean, it is, Heidi, like deceptively simple in a way. It's just add $1 to every ticket and then create a pool of money, and then Feet helps figure out where that money can go. But a question from me is, you know, you mentioned early on that this isn't like a tick a carbon offset when you buy your flights, or, you know, at Woolworths when you get to the end of it and it goes, do you want to round up and we'll give it to Ronald McDonald House or whatever. Like, this isn't an optional thing for a punter. It's just, it's built into the ticket, and they might not even see it when they buy their ticket. They might not realize, in the same way they don't know that some of that money is going to your agent and some of that money is going to your sound guy, and they might not even know that $1 is going to a sustainability program. I'm just curious about that choice, because you could have built it as an optional thing, but you mentioned leadership. Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. We thought long and hard about the best way to leverage the biggest impact. And we looked at the research at the time, and there just wasn't much uptake with the tick box option. The most successful program at the time was Qantas. Qantas was running their carbon offsetting tick box situation, and that only had an 8% uptake from audiences, which was huge, really, for the size of business they are. But still, 8% out of 100, percent it's a very small number. And Splendor in the Grass back in the day also had a green, I think it was called a green offset ticket that audiences could purchase or opt to choose. And the uptake there was 0.5% or something so minimal. So we really wanted to do two things. One, actually raise a decent amount of money that could move the dial on projects. And then two, send a clear message that the philosophy here is that sustainability isn't an optional extra. It's not a luxury tick box category of order of priority. It needs to be embedded as a priority action into the DNA of all industries. And here is a way that we thought the music industry could adopt and implement this, and actually raise some significant buck.
Does anyone have any questions at this point before we get into some of the details with Oli and Lime Cordiale? Any questions for Heidi and Bea about the solar slice, how it's structured, how it works?
I'll give you a quick one, Heidi.
Wait, who's this?
Oh, this is Oli.
Hi, Oli. Thanks for joining the call.
I'm just kind of interested, because I sort of maybe miss out on some of this part of it. Like, how easy, when the artist says they want to, go forward with the solar slice, how much work is that for management, and how much of a headache is it to just apply that to your ticket and with these ticket companies and all of that sort of thing? How much time does it take for managers who love to whinge and moan about their time?
It is an email to the ticketing agency saying we'd like to embed an extra $1 in as a promoter inside charge. That's the correct term for it. And that's it. So if you've told them to do it, it just takes them an email to implement it. Because it's worked across every ticketing provider now. So every Australian ticketing provider are aware of the solar slice, and it's just
they all know what's going on.
Yeah, they're worded up, they get it done. The longest part for us is convincing people to do it. So sometimes managers want to have a bunch of calls to understand and get their head around the concept, but once they're in, it's super simple.
Cool.
Well, Oli, you're here now. Let's keep talking about, Lime Cordiale is kind of like this incredible case study of the solar slice in action. I feel like I'm going to give you a bit of a blow up here, Oli, but I was at Paddy in the Paddock a couple months back, and I ended up filming a whole bunch of artists backstage, making content, mate, for social media. And one of the questions I was asking all of the artists was like, who is an Australian artist that is inspiring you right now for being outspoken and for taking action on something they believe in? And the responses were pretty much split 50-50. Everyone shouting out Miss Kanina and Lime Cordiale. And specifically, everyone wanted to talk about the Lime Green Festival, which I know has just happened over the weekend. but more generally about your kind of ongoing commitment as a band to these ideas, to environmental advocacy, sustainability. Just in a nutshell, like why are you and Louis so committed to this? Like where does that come from? Does it come from your childhood or your family or somewhere else?
It came from our childhood because, we've always been surfers and loved the bush and the coast, and we sort of started doing this stuff for, just getting plastic off beaches, and we were kind of into Sea Shepherd when we were younger, and we would play some shows and yeah, charity shows. It was an easy gig. You had an audience there already. So, and sometimes we'd even raffle off a gig by Lime Cordiale one of those raffles on the northern beaches where people are spending crazy money. So that was cool. And yeah, we've just, I think it was really during COVID, we were spending a lot of time on our farm. It was a new farm that Louis and I had purchased together, and we got really detailed in a lot of regenerative culture and learnt a lot about that. Um, and just got obsessed with these kind of micro details on the farm, like not using too much diesel. Do we really need to use the tractor today? And what about the soil health here? And then when COVID lifted, we really got this insight into how much carbon we were using just compared to the local farmers there that we were working with. Um, and we just felt like massive hypocrites. And the hypocrite thing's an interesting one. I think everyone should just be okay with being a hypocrite, but like own it and then work out how you can reduce your carbon footprint and like work with that. So as Heidi said, we do have a heavy carbon footprint. And like that's the first thing that people are going to want to attack you with in the comments. Like, oh, how'd you fly to Europe then, mate? And you're like, on a plane. Yeah, like we know that. So yeah, we just I guess we like a lot of Australians, we love the ocean, we love the bush. So yeah, we're just making sure we can do something about it. Mm.
And so then how did you and like feet cross paths before like 2022 was the first time that you implemented the solar slice, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I was trying to remember on at the beginning of this call, and I
The
can't.
meat cute. We want the meat cute.
Yeah, I was actually thinking then that the first time I learned about the solar slice was it was like a newspaper article. I think maybe my mum or dad like passed it over to me, and it was a feature on what Heidi had been doing, and I'd always been a cloud control fan, and I was like, whoa, that's really cool. Do you remember, Heidi? I don't
I I think I don't remember the like the email, or like I don't remember the actual, connection point first, but I remember our first meeting. So
Yeah,
however we came into each other's radars, we then met up at that cafe Bean House in Redfern.
yeah,
And you were thinking about doing a solar powered show or a solar powered festival. And so we were just ideating about that because we were building the solar farm over here. You were wanting to create solar powered events around the New South Wales area, especially in the area
yeah.
from. Um,
And then our older sisters are environmentalists. They work in this space and they, whip us into shape, make sure that we're doing the right thing. So one of our sisters knew B and we got introduced. And our first little project, I think it was a green music project, but correct me if I'm wrong, could have been a feet project, it was just using driving around in electric cars for 3 shows. Was that a feat project, Heidi? It
yeah,
was.
that was, I think B, you led that one, didn't you?
Yeah, that
Cool.
was the first solo slice with you guys that I
Yeah.
worked on, which was really cool, teaming up with Good Carco and
So
yeah,
simple, and
yeah.
I was taken back to those weeks just now because we've just driven back from Adelaide in an electric vehicle, and it was a challenge, and we really felt like we were pushing boundaries because we were doing shows in Sydney, Canberra, and Newcastle, and we only just made it. It was so hard to find the charging stations, and we've just come back from Adelaide. We did Sydney to Adelaide and back in a much bigger vehicle with a whole bunch of gear and 4 people in it. So yeah, it has come a long way.
Yeah, totally. And this first tour, also the Facts of Life tour, I think was the first one that we launched the Solar Slice with. And this was all about funding the restoration of an old growth rainforest in your kind of local area. So I think as you shared your story about the farm, you were really keen to have a broader impact, but in the local Northern Rivers? No, West Clunes. I think it's Northern Rivers.
Yeah, we visited the site, so that was a
Yeah.
cool thing to do as well, because we were excited about that, and to really see the impact you've had firsthand is awesome. We were by Maximo that put all that together. He walked us around, some older big rainforest trees that they'd planted. We walked around the ones that had just been planted, and then he took us to, a rainforest that had never been cut down and been there for whatever, a million years. So that was epic.
Mm. I love that about the Solar Slice. I just that you kind of you customize Heidi and Bea, like the where the money goes. Like it's often really deeply related to where a band comes from, or where a festival site is, or I think that's really, I don't know, it helps with the storytelling that you might want to do later on about the Solar Slice, because you can really feel connected to the impact that you're making. So then what, after 2022, we have 2024. I want to also just shout out Oli for sharing these numbers, like the amount raised.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's good on you for like being transparent about that stuff. This is a big step up though. Hey, like you sold a few tickets on this tour. um,
totally.
what were the goals for the Solar Slice in 2024 on this tour?
Um, well, just to add to what you said there, like there are so many things that you can do in this space, and it can get pretty overwhelming. So working with these guys and just choosing what like relates to you is really cool. It's like one thing that is a bit off-putting is ticking that box on the Qantas when you're booking a Qantas ticket, not really knowing where it goes, and it's just this anonymous thing, and you don't know if it's a bit sus, like who's pocketing the money, like the transparency, but also just, okay, so we love the ocean, so we're going to work with Service for Climate, but other people might, yeah, really love electric vehicles, renewable energy, or whatever it is. So like, yeah, just choosing that is great, and it kind of helps with having those conversations. It just really helps with how overwhelming it can all be. So this project, yeah, the HBO fuel really came from one of those conversations, because I remember talking to Heidi and just being like, we really want to get a biodiesel bus in Europe, and push the boundaries there, because I know that there are a few more, but we know that there's a few of those around, but it's just going to cost more. And our, European budget is already so hectic. And Heidi just sort of said, that does fit under one of these banners, that's reducing. And yeah, we pushed the boundaries with that one, because when we decided to do that, everyone was telling us that like you're only going to be able to fill the tank like once in England, and then you'll go around Europe. You won't be able to fill up the bus with biodiesel again. Like there's just not enough of those pumps. But by the time the tour came around, like things had advanced so much that we actually didn't have to fill up with regular diesel at all. It was all biodiesel. So that felt really rewarding. I really love claiming this one, because we also approached our bus company and said, hey, we're not going to go with you guys on this tour. We're going to go to a different bus company because they have this biodiesel bus. And they went, no, 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 wait, hold on. What if we like converted one of our buses to be able to do that? And that felt really cool, that it's just consumer demand really at its finest. Like it was just, we said, hey, sorry, we want to go elsewhere, and they changed. So I'm sure a whole bunch of other people have been using that bus, like-minded musicians.
That's
Yeah.
so good. So good. Um, well, then we get to last year. So you mentioned Surface for Climate, and you mentioned this
Yeah.
is like, again, really personal for you guys. So this was the final five for the bite. This was a campaign that was sort of already kind of taking place via Surfers for Climate, and you kind of talk to them on how to support it?
Yeah. They're we are the musician version of Surfers for Climate. They're a great bunch of people and kind of a simple one, really. I mean, you learn a lot through all of this. I didn't really know what was going on in the bite before supporting it, but these guys explained it to us, and yeah, we just felt passionate about it straight away. And also just doing some cool extra stuff to make it a bit more, I don't know, fun on the day. Having like a crowd surfing whale that had a QR code on his shirt when he was walking around, like so
Drinking
people
beers.
interact, yeah, drinking beers and like that was really cool. Um, so yeah, that was mad. I loved that one. Mm.
And then that gets us to 2026, which, I mean, this was just over the weekend, right? This was Saturday night, was it? Or
Yeah,
yeah,
still feeling the effects of
yeah,
it. Literally just got back from the big drive.
yeah,
Um, so this really comes from when we were first talking to Heidi about doing a solar festival. At that time, it just felt like it couldn't really be done, and people were saying, you can't power a stage with a battery or with solar because there's, three-phase power, blah, 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 all this technical stuff. Um, and then in the States, we met a guy that just brought along this battery about an esky size, and we just plugged a bunch of stuff in it, and it was fine. And we played a whole show. The support bands all plugged into that, and it was only the back line that was being powered, but it went down by like 2% or something. So these batteries are way more powerful than people say. It just needed an example. So we wanted to be the case study to show that you can power a whole bunch of lights and power a big stage. And, I don't even think we used the whole battery on the day. So yeah, that was cool. It was the biggest battery powered stage.
yeah,
As far as we know, no one's contradicted that so far.
yeah. And then on top of that, again, because this is a Lime Cordiale show, the solar slice is implemented. So for every ticket you're selling, you're also collecting that $1, and this time around, that's gone towards a couple of different projects that are fighting the algal bloom, which I think has escaped South Australia to become a national awareness issue. But for anyone who's maybe not following the algal bloom, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's pretty gnarly. It's not nationally known, let alone globally, really. But they compare it to the bushfires of 2019. I think the area that's getting affected is like 14 times the size of Adelaide. And I was talking to someone because we rode some bikes to the festival. I was talking to one of the bike riders there, and he said he lives on the ocean, just walks down the beach, and there's all these dead fish and things like that. So it's yeah, it's yeah. I mean, we got fed a whole bunch of devastating information over the weekend about it, but it's just something that's happening in the ocean, and I don't think there's really any proper government support there, and it's all hidden under the blanket of the ocean and just ignored. But yeah, devastating what's going on. Yeah,
B,
You
do you
also,
want to share
oh
a
yeah,
bit
Heidi,
about,
go.
yeah, sorry, do you want to share a bit, B, about
would know
how
a lot more.
you came up with toxic surf as the right direction for this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea we wanted to support something obviously that was really actively engaged in the community and the grief, and from surfers to fishers to everyone, just everyone basically right across South Australia has been heavily affected by what's going on. Like Ollie said, a lot of people walking on the beach and seeing dead animals, and people's health is being affected, and it's definitely very downplayed. The government's kind of trying to suppress it a little bit as far as the urgency of it. And it's obviously connected quite heavily with climate change and rising temperatures. So the funding from Lime Green went to support this community-led initiative, and they actually hosted regional and schools workshops to build these beautiful sea creature lanterns. that were kind of honouring the sea life that's been lost to the bloom. And those lanterns, you can kind of see in the pictures there, they kind of roamed throughout the audiences during Lime Green Festival. And it was really cool. Audience members actually came up to the Toxic Surf crew and asked if they could hold some lanterns and walk around in between the next in the next set. So it was a really beautiful way to navigate a very tricky conversation and build a bit of hope and collective coming together around that grief as well. So, you know, the school kids got to make the lanterns and talk about the bloom and hear about solutions, but also just feel heard and come together on that shared disaster. So yeah, they were super, super appreciative of the funding and the broader advocacy and support that Oli and Louis gave that platform and that conversation. It was, yeah, definitely a highlight of the kind of audience participation bit.
And the reality is when people come to see a gig or they go to a music festival, like, they're often just wanting to have a good time. They're not always thinking about this stuff. But at the same time, like, music events are transformative experiences. They're often where people are receptive to new ideas and receptive to connecting to each other or connecting to a bigger picture moment. So they can be really effective moments for cutting through and reaching somebody. So yeah, I love this. I love Toxic Surf. It sounds amazing. I want to give us some time for anyone who might have some questions. If anyone wants to get into the details or wants to learn more about Lime Green or talk to Oli or any of us. But just a couple of other examples of the Solar Slice in action. Angie McMahon in 2024. Heidi or Bea, you want to tell us a little bit about how Angie chose to use her Solar Slice fund?
Bea, go for it.
Yeah, sure. It was awesome working with Angie, and she chose to support two different projects. One was one that's just outside of Melbourne, so local to her home, which was the Widgewa Sanctuary. And she planted 700 trees to create habitat for a local endangered little wallaby, which is pretty awesome. And then we also supported First Nations Future, which is a First Nations-led organisation helping to create economic and wealth justice throughout different communities. So they work really closely with different regional First Nations-led initiatives, anywhere from kind of campaigning to workshops and community development. And she wanted to split them across those two impact areas. And there was also a little QR code that audience members could scan at all the shows to plant trees in that project, which was pretty cool.
And the Moving Stills too, like emerging band, but doing pretty great stuff. They got the Solar Slice on board for their tour last year. And, also a coastal band, right? Wanting to preserve the health of the coasts.
Yeah, they wanted to support a really cool bush care group called McMaster's Beach Care, and that's their kind of local surf spot that they're really passionate about. And there's currently a lot of challenges with the dunes kind of eroding with sea level rise. So a lot of the work they're doing is to plant seagrasses and help protect that little pocket of coastline. And yeah, they were awesome to work with across their tour, super passionate, and bunch of legends.
And one of the great things about this all happening under the banner of the Solar Slice, all these different bands and different festivals coming together under the banner of Solar Slice, is it really demonstrates this solidarity across the music community. Sometimes musicians and artists, or even just individuals, right? Like, we feel like it's all up to us, that it has to be us that figures it all out. I really love this as an example of everyone, you still find your way of doing it, your thing that's very specific to you, but we can all like be part of this project together and kind of come under the Solar Slice banner. There's something really, really appealing about that, I think. So if someone's on this call or they're watching it back later, how do they get involved with the Solar Slice? Like, how do they do it?
Yeah, pretty simple. So just get in touch with us. Make sure it's a few weeks before the tickets have gone on sale for your tour. Ideally, many months is great. But the closest we've done it, I think, is a fortnight before tickets went on sale. It's very quick to integrate, but it's more about getting the headspace of the key decision makers to go, yep, we're doing this. That's very hard. The closer you leave it to the tour, obviously. So yeah, get in touch with us. We'll set it up with your manager. So that's just an email, like I said, to your promoter or the ticketing agency to integrate that extra $1 into the ticket build. And then we design the Solar Slice program together. We tailor it to your tour. Then you deliver the shows. We deliver the impacts, and your tour helps accelerate the change that you want to see in the world.
Amazing. Yeah. And we just want more and more artists to come on board with this, big or small. So yeah, Bea and Heidi's details are there. I think it's also, Bea's chucking some bits in the chat, or Bridget's chucking a couple of things in the chat, a Google form you can fill out, or Bea's email address as well. But we still have a few minutes, and I'm curious if anyone's got any questions, if anyone's got any curly questions about how this is implemented, or you guys have mentioned a couple of times like how tricky it can be to get teams on board. I can hear, Luke, do you have a question? Oh, he's on mute. Yeah, I mean, Heidi, you mentioned it can be sometimes difficult. Often artists drive this kind of stuff, and they, sometimes have to twist the arms of the people they work with who have the artist's best interest in heart. Yeah. What do you think? What would you say to an artist who wants to do this, but they're a bit fearful that they're going to have pushback from other parts of their team?
I could probably say something there.
Yeah, go Oli.
Can you, these guys really take over as soon as you kind of say, or go for it. So it's pretty bloody easy. You get fed a bunch of information. We've been fed like options, because on the lead up to a tour, you just jam packed with things to do. So it has been super smooth and easy. And I think also if you're worried about how preachy or maybe, or even just like how difficult it all is, I think you can be as outspoken with it as you want, really. $1 from every ticket sits there. And as you said, then people might not necessarily notice. You don't necessarily have to go on about it. But I think one of the most rewarding things on stage is being able to say, $1 from every one of your tickets went towards this. And we didn't do that. You guys did that. So yeah, that's always been my favorite thing. And this has been always the easiest part of our green, advocacy or climate work has just been, well, first and foremost, we'll do the feet thing, the solar slice, that's easy. And then maybe we'll work out other things that we want to do. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome to hear, Oli.
It's also a really good point. I'll just quickly jump in on the talking about this stuff publicly. Like, we're very aware that that's not everyone's not ready or comfortable with that just yet, which is totally fine. It's quite a big, complex topic to talk about. So we've worked with plenty of artists who just kind of want to keep it in the back end, which is completely fine. They want to fund the impact, do a great job, maybe include a short blurb on the ticket buying process just for transparency and audience awareness. But yeah, it's totally optional, is the talking about it stuff. Obviously, it's great if you want to, but it's not a have to.
Totally. And people can smell inauthenticity. So if you don't feel it, if you're not feeling comfortable, it's not really going to land for your audiences. So we think it's much better to just get the impacts done. So like, even be a silent supporter, just put the solar slice on, don't need to talk about it. That is a great outcome for us, But then if you want to go on the journey for figuring out how to find your voice on these things, to really be able to articulate what you do care about in your own language and drawing from your own childhood experiences or whatever it is you want to draw from, we're here to support that as well. And we plug into a whole network of like climate communicators as well, who can give you training if you really want to go to the next level of being supernatural in discussing these things.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for anyone on the call today?
G'day, Tim.
Hey, Joel.
I got one for Beatrice and Heidi. I work as part of the Crooked River Estate and Wine Festival, so I think Ollie and Louis will be down here on the June long weekend, so we'll see those guys then. For next year's festival, we're looking at implementing the solar slice for planning or revegetation and regeneration projects on site. So we have a 10-hectare biodiversity conservation area. Is that something that would be allowable under the solar slice initiatives?
100%.
Excellent. Easy question.
Got your answer there? Yeah, that's such an awesome project to be able to roll out. And I mean, I think we mentioned it earlier, but we have hundreds of impact partners right across Australia that we work with in various spaces. So whether it's supporting the seedlings or the actual on-ground planting, getting artists involved, advice on reporting and maintenance. There's so many ways that the Solar Slice can fund great work like that, and on-site is like huge win, amazing.
You couldn't be more direct action for that to happen, literally at the festival site. That's really cool. And Joel, what we could do is look at getting some of the artists who are part of your festival, who, if they want to communicate the impacts by, perhaps putting together a video to chat about it, to have a walkthrough with some of the festival owners like yourself. That would be something that could be really impactful too.
Yep, great. Well, I'm just filling out the EOI form now. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
That's rad. Yeah. I mean, just spinning off that, this is music, right? Like, we're all creative people. So, having that flexibility with where the Solar Slice funding goes can not just be about like connecting it to something that's real and local for you, but also, you can be creative with it. And like Oli mentioned before, or it might have been you, Heidi, it's kind of come up a couple of times with that idea of the trust that an artist has with their fans, and that how important it is to be authentic. And as opposed to, when Qantas, who's just copping lots of fire in this on this call, it feels like, but when you tick that box, you don't really know what it means or where it's going. And as an artist, your trust that you have with your fans is one of the most precious things you've got. So you want to be able to feel like they're going to trust your calls. And if you can really like drill down and make where the money is going, where the impact's going to happen, something very tangible and real and meaningful to you, then your fans are going to trust that too. It's almost going to deepen their relationship with you as well. Any other questions for Oli or the Feet team? I think perhaps not. But thank you everyone for joining this call. Thank you Heidi and Bea and Oli for sharing your thoughts and giving us a bit of a Solar Slice deep dive. It is in some ways actually a really simple program, but I know heaps of hard work goes into particularly those relationships with your impact partners and then implementing. So yeah, thank you for all the work you do. And for anyone who wants to learn more, again, follow the link to that Google form in the chat, or we will be sending around a bit of an email after this with some resources. And if you have found this video online and you're watching it 5 to 10 years from now and climate change is fixed, well, we did it. We did it. Yay. And it was all us. Music did it. Isn't that great? Big round of applause for all of us. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for joining us. And unless anyone else has got anything to say, we'll leave it here.